He told me, I don't think you can play in this league. We don't believe that you could have a career in this league.
What is it like to hear that when you've invested what you had invested?
It's his honest opinion, but it's also one man's opinion. I don't need everybody to love me. I need one team to love me. I need one coach.
In 2012, an undersized football player with a chip on his shoulder from Marrero, Louisiana, had an idea. In the middle of an NFL career that saw him go from undrafted free agent to Pro Bowler and Super Bowl champion, Ryan Clark seized on an opportunity, channeled his sense of competition to fuel a new life in media.
I found enjoyment in looking at the baddest men in the world and saying, I am going to split your face mask.
Clark not only overcame the odds to simply play in the NFL, he also overcame a terrifying on-field health scare that nearly took his life, but also birthed the next chapter of his career.
The year after I got sick, they booked like all these media things, and one of them was First Take. One weekend, an agent called me, and they were like, man, I think we could get you paid to do TV while you play. And I was like, well, is that normal? And they was like, no, nobody's ever done it.
Since then, Clark has become one of the top voices in sports media. As a regular on ESPN, where he won an Emmy, as well as on his own wildly successful podcast, The Pivot.
ESPN, I'm talking about an object. Pivot, I'm talking about humans.
What do you think is the biggest problem in sports media?
Liars?
How so?
Well, I think...
And it all started with one idea.
ABC Cam, take one, marker.
Ryan Clark, welcome to Idea Generation.
Man, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'm curious, as a major player in the sports media marketplace, when you survey the landscape in 2025, what do you think is the biggest problem in sports media?
Liars?
How so?
Well, I think it's now become this race to be first, right? And it's not necessarily that people are intentionally lying. It's that in the race to be first, you aren't fact checking. In the race to be first, you aren't making sure what your idea is, what your opinion is, whatever you're being asked to share is the truth. And it's the other side of people not being accountable. When we are wrong or when we give information to the public or to the viewer that doesn't represent the truth, doesn't represent the facts, it's our job to tell people that. Right? But you're scared to tell people that, and people are scared to admit those things because now does it devalue my opinion? Or in some way, does it invalidate my experience or what I'm supposed to be doing for my job? And I think that the immediacy of content, how people consume it now, has made us, because I'll say us, has made us less diligent in doing the work to be as correct as possible before being as quick as possible.
So obviously playing the game gives you a unique insight that you're able to share with the audience. But I'm curious beyond that, sort of philosophically, what is the greatest strength that you were able to glean out of your playing days that you can apply to media? And also, what vulnerabilities did that perspective create?
Yeah, I think the first thing that happens from playing sports is like you're willing to work harder than other people. You know what I'm saying? And it's not about me being able to judge how hard these people work. It's just an understanding of what we had to do to excel at the only thing in life I've ever wanted to do, right? And so there's not going to be much in life that matches that passion, right? That matches the passion of that 4-year-old kid that begged my dad to let me play on the football team he was coaching, even though they were 6 and 7-year-olds. And I was like, Pop, just let me play one position. And he was like, well, the easiest one you can play is defensive end. And I was like, Dad, what do I have to do? He said, don't let the quarterback or the running back outside of you. So as a 4-year-old, I lined up wide as I possibly could. And that was my only job. Now, did they run inside of me a lot? Yes. But they never got outside of me because that was the one rule. And then as I continued to play, I realized, okay, I have to outwork this person, outwork that person. That's the thing you bring to TV that I believe is different. And then that competitive edge. Like, I can be honest, like early on, it was not difficult, but because I don't love TV, right? Like, I don't have like this burning passion for TV. I don't want to be a TV star. Like, none of that excites me. I didn't have a great reason for getting up and doing it. And I told this story maybe once. Stephen A was asked years ago, who are like the next Stephen A's, or like who are the athletes who would be the next guys? And he didn't mention me, right? And I was the first player to ever have a TV contract, first active football player to ever work in TV. And I was like, well, naturally, like that's my trajectory, right? Like that's what I'm supposed to be on, because in this way I'm a trendsetter. But you said those two dudes? I bet. Got you. I'll show you. But it's about, man, I'm competing against him every day. And when I walk off this set, I want to know and feel in my heart, man, I killed dude. As great as I want him to do, because he might be my friend, he might be my colleague, I want to crush him. And that was kind of how things started to change for me. My ideas come from really experience. A ton of my ideas come from passion, right? Things I've felt, and because of where I live or what I've seen or what I've been through, those things develop or create these ideas in my mind that I need people to see or to touch, or I need to do to help people.
You mentioned not necessarily having that core love of television. Football was your passion from childhood, but you do have a degree in mass communications from LSU. So, while you were in school, were you sort of thinking of concurrent paths, or was there any sort of thought for what would happen after football?
I wanted to be a sports information director at a college. When I was in school, and I thought I was so much better on TV when I was 18 to 22 than I really was. I watched some of those old videos. I was pretty terrible. But every game we lost, the sports information director would come get me. I didn't speak after every game. I didn't speak after every win, but I spoke after every loss. Every loss, they made me available for the media. And in that 2 to 5 minute walk to the press, the sports information director would give me little tips. He would give me little notes. He would tell me, all right, RC, they might ask you this, or don't let them bait you into this, or be ready for this. And I learned so much in like that short walk. I obviously play a sport that's heavily populated with minorities and African Americans. And so my thing was, damn, what if the kid that's being walked over is looking at me, right? What if I'm at LSU and it's a kid from the West Bank of New Orleans who was told at some point he needed to speak a different way, or who was told at some point he wasn't smart enough to do this? What if I could give him the information I learned from being in his shoes? And so that was the job I wanted to do. I'm glad I didn't do it, because Mike Barnett, who was there when I was at school at LSU, was still there, so I wouldn't have the job I wanted. But that was kind of the career trajectory I thought I'd be on.
You obviously went to school in a pre-NIL era. How do you think the NIL changes the trajectory of the scholar athlete?
I think it makes that athlete different, right? Money changes everything. Some things it changes for the good, other things it changes negatively. I was blessed to be able to see it through my son. He's now with the New York Jets, but when he got into the transfer portal, we're so blessed. Like, my son doesn't have to take care of me and his mom. You know, whatever money he was going to be offered, he didn't have to pour back into his household. It was his money. But, we go to Notre Dame, we're doing all of the things on the visit, having all of the meetings, and he kind of committed before we got to the NIL meeting, and so we're sitting down, I'm having French toast, we're sitting down and we're having the NIL meeting, and, he's told that his baseline is going to be more money than I made my rookie year in NFL.
It's crazy.
Right? And so him, because he never had to make a decision based on money, it was like this cool deal that, dang, Pop, like, I don't have to call you for stuff now. But when you think about some of these kids who don't have the right people around them, or don't have that foundation of having some wealth in their family, it means everything. but by meaning everything to them and their family. Now you have the hanger-ons who push you in different direction based on dollar signs, not based on the best field, the best spot, the best place to grow. And so I think players have to be extremely, weary.
When you got out of school, you famously went undrafted and then had sort of a touch and go first couple of
Yeah.
years in the league. How did that experience sort of change your relationship with perseverance? And how do you think it framed the rest of your career?
I think it framed the rest of my career more than it sort of changed my perspective on perseverance. I was a very good high school player, but I wasn't the biggest recruit of my class, And so I worked hard to get into like this early summer program because school was different then. And I worked hard to get into this summer program because I was like, man, if I could beat some of these freshmen who they think are better than me to school, maybe I can get a leg up on them. And I did, And so my mind was always kind of working in that manner. When I got cut from the Giants, right? Tom Coughlin, who I love and respect so much for this, was very honest with me. He told me, I don't think you can play in this league. I don't think you're physical enough to play the position that you're playing. We don't believe that you could hold up for 16 games or play that position well enough to have a career in this league.
What is it like to hear that when you've invested what you had invested to that point?
I wasn't hurt, right? It's his honest opinion. And in truth, it's an expert opinion. This is Tom Coughlin. He had already been the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He ended up winning 2 Super Bowls, but it's also one man's opinion, right? I don't need everybody to love me. I need one team to love me. I need one coach to love me. But then I remember when I got to Washington, I remember what he said. You're not big enough, right? You're not physical enough. You're not strong enough to hold up. And so just in that camp, I was like, everything I'm doing is going to be physical. If I'm running down on kickoff, I'm going to take on the biggest man. If I'm in 9-on-7, which is a run drill, I'm going to take on the toughest fullback, the toughest tight end, the toughest lineman. And it wasn't about having to persevere through negativity as much as it was about learning from it. And I was able to do that. And it also put me in a position to where like the subjective opinions of humans doesn't matter, right? Like he got to critique me. He didn't get to define me. The best idea I've ever had was a prayer. I had been cut from the New York Giants. And the prayer I had was, I was telling everybody I was okay without football, but I really wanted like another opportunity to play. Because in this book, it said, anything you don't pray for, you leave up to chance.
When you arrived at Pittsburgh and you finally kind of found a home, how long into that tenure did it take before you felt like this is where I'm going to be for?
Oh, they hated me.
Really?
Oh, man. Pittsburgh is like a tough place to go, bro. Like they're such good humans. This
is the team or the
team.
fans? Okay.
The team. Yeah, the fans are cool too, but only when you win it. I remember my first summer there, I went to a cookout, and it's all of the defense and James Ferrier, who was the captain at the time. We're at his house, and he won't talk to me. Like, he's grilling. I try to go outside to start a conversation. He won't talk to me. And so, like, I'm walking around the locker room, like, nobody's talking to me. But Chris Hope, who had left to go to the Titans, that was their guy. He had been there 4 years. They had won a Super Bowl together. They had a relationship. He had, I always talk about emotional bank accounts. He'd made a ton of deposits into everybody's emotional bank account where I had none. And so I remember we're playing Cincinnati, Chris Henry, homeboy, 504, God rest his soul. He runs a skinny post, and I smash him. Boom, ball pops in the air. Ike Taylor catches the football, runs it down into the red zone, and James Harrison, right? We called him Debo. He runs onto the field, and he's like looking at him, and he's like, "Now you a fucking Steeler." You know what I'm saying? Like that was the first time I was like, "Oh, I get it. It's not about being friends or me being a cool cat. It's about what will you give for the names on the back of the jerseys, not necessarily the logo, right? Are you going to give it all for Troy Polamalu? Are you going to give it all for Casey Hampton? Are you going to give it all for James Ferrier? And the more I did that and the more I learned that, like, these are still some of my closest friends, in life, but you had to earn it. And so I would say it was probably then from a team perspective, and I got really sick in '07. I got sick in October. I was 205 pounds. By the time I had the surgery and I was cleared to train, I was 160 pounds.
Jesus.
Right? And so the defensive back coach at that time was named Ray Horton, and we just did not get along. But we didn't get along because he couldn't understand how I was beating out all of these players he loved who were more talented than me. And the year didn't go well defensively after I got sick. And he told me, the doctors don't know like how healthy you'll be or if you'll ever be what you were. And he was like, but if you are, you'll never have to worry about your spot again. He was like, the lessons we learned from not having you were greater than the lessons we learned from having you. And so I think it was that conversation where I was finally like, okay, cool. You know what? I might be all right.
Speaking of this health incident, this is a near-death experience. You had complications from sickle cell. Did it feel like it could go away? Like,
oh yeah, I thought I was gone. Oh yeah, I said the prayer. I thought I was dying. 2 weeks after I got sick, my mom was up helping with the kids and stuff. And like I just start shaking, right? Because I'm cold. And so like they put all these covers on me. They put like this towel, they had like a towel over my head. My wife, God bless her heart, she went and grabbed like a blow dryer and she was like trying to, but she put it on like the cool setting. So now I'm really freezing because she had it on the wrong setting. And so like I'm shaking, I'm shivering, like not like shivering like this, like the bed shaking. And so my mom prays constantly. So my mom is like laying on top of me, rubbing like blessed oil on my head and praying. And like my wife's trying to warm me up and like nothing's working. And so I just start praying. And what I learned is like these things that I've accumulated don't really matter, right? Because when I thought I was dying, I asked God to like bless my son. And I wanted him to become a great man. I wanted him to be better than his father. I wanted him to have a family. I wanted him to take care of that family. I wanted him to be God-fearing. I prayed for my daughters, right? I prayed that they grew up to be strong and they grew up to be independent and they found a good man that would love them. And even if they didn't, that they knew that Christ did. And I prayed for my wife that, that she'd be okay and that she'd recover and that she'd find somebody to love them. It was only one stipulation. He couldn't be more handsome than I was, because like that, I just couldn't live with, you know what I mean? And
is that possible?
yeah, I mean, it's possible, bro. It's hard. It's possible. And then I prayed for my soul, right? And I told God, I said, whatever I have done that has shamed your kingdom, whatever I have done to not live up to the potential that you put in me, I said, I'm sorry. And then I was like, and I'm ready. And I stopped shaking. I wasn't cold. It was over. What that moment taught me was that, like, what you truly work for, right? Because at the time, I had multiple houses, I had cars, I had more money at this time, which now looking back, it wasn't that much. I had more money at this time than I'd ever dream I could make playing football. And none of that was at the forefront of my mind. It just taught me a lot about who loves me. It taught me a lot about who supports me. And it also just taught me a lot about myself in the sense that in any of those points, I never cared about me. I didn't care about what I wouldn't have, what I would lose. I cared about my family and what my job was supposed to be for them. And maybe I wouldn't even be here to try to do it, or I could no longer do what I've been doing.
What, if any, connection do you see between that experience and how it changed you and the fact that, 14 months later, you are putting a Super Bowl ring on your finger?
Made the Super Bowl less exciting to win, right? Being sick changed my approach to football. The saying goes, every play could be your last. Play every play like it's your last. Don't nobody really do that, Like, I know this ain't I know if they're kneeling the ball here, all goes well, I should play next week, But it made that stick out to me. And I remember the first game we played that year was against the Texans, and it was at home. And I remember running onto the field and being so grateful that I got to do it again. And it did leave that imprint. Every play could be your last play. Every play could mean it's the end of your career. Every play could mean, now for me, it's the end of your life. And so it really changed that. And so that entire year was like the Super Bowl. And I just remember after we won it, I was laying in the confetti on the ground and I was just praying, I was just praising, and I was just thanking God. And I wasn't thanking him so much because we won the Super Bowl. I was thanking him so much because I was alive to see it. I was alive to be a part of it. I was alive to experience it. I was breathing championship air every day after I got out of the hospital, you know, and to be with my boys and to be such a big part of an amazing accomplishment was only because God saved my life. And I think, you know, shortly after I got out of the hospital, one of my best friends, Sean Taylor, died. And like I'll just never forget sitting on the stairs in my house that morning, and my son walking up to me, and he was just like, "Dad, what happened to Uncle Sean?" You know, and feeling like I stole something. You know what I'm saying? Like knowing how much more he meant to football than I did, knowing how much, you know, he meant to Jackie and baby Jackie, how much he went to Pedro and his family, and like how, honestly, how much better football would have been if they got him instead of me. You know what I'm saying? And so with that in mind, like I just took him out there with me every single time. Like I never played another game by myself. I never played another game for myself, you know? And so for him to be a part of it too, man, was beautiful.
You know, you mentioned that this sort of turned the volume down on the Super Bowl win, but I'm curious, you know, you spent your entire life from 4 years old up to that moment, presumably chasing that win, right? Mm-hmm. That's the pinnacle of the game. To achieve that, how does it change your relationship with the game as you move forward?
It doesn't change it, right? Because like, you know, I don't believe in love at first sight. First time I ever saw football though, I knew him. I knew her, whatever you want to say, I knew it. Like the first time they threw it to me, I knew exactly what to do. The first time they told me go tackle the dude with it, I knew exactly what to do. Like I didn't have to learn to love it. The only thing I can relate my love for football to is it's my love for my children, right? Like before they could ever do anything for me, like I just like, man, you're the most perfect thing in the world. And that was how I felt about football. And I never had a relationship with football that was dependent on wins. It was an unconditional love for the game, right? And if you love football conditionally, you're gonna get your heart broken. When Tom Coughlin tells me I can't do it, if my love for football is conditioned on my wins and losses, then I can't recover from that. And so winning the Super Bowl was just a part of the journey that I got to have with the love of my life. It wasn't that it had to be like, what if I never did it, right? Like, what if I never won the Super Bowl, right? Would that make, if I'm doing it the right way, would that change how beautiful every opportunity I got to do it was? Like I never focused on like the end goal. Like I never made those goals like, hey, this year I'm gonna win a Super Bowl. You know, like my goal was like play every snap. My goal was be present. My goal was run to the ball, right? It was those little things because I could control those things. And so I don't think like that changed it as much as it made me know that like what I was putting into it was the correct thing. The effort I played with was the way I was supposed to do it. Now the loss, F you, bro. Like that, that was different. Like, I don't remember a lot of stuff from the win. Like I don't. I remember all of it from the loss. I remember what it was like walking off with Coach Tomlin as the last two people with confetti falling on my head and thinking to myself, we gotta get back. And now knowing like we never did, right? Like we never got our lick back. Like we never got that opportunity. And so I think the loss changed me a little bit more than the win.
The average career in the NFL is 4 or 5 years. You made it for 12, 13.
Mm-hmm.
How deep into your career did you start contemplating life after football?
Probably like year 8, year 8, year 9, because I wasn't supposed to get 8 or 9. And I had a real job when I was in the league. I worked at LSU when I got cut, so I had a real job before, and they sucked. You know what I mean? Like it just wasn't cool. So probably around that time, and even that sort of happened by happenstance that it became a media career, which was to follow, retirement.
Tell me about that transition, because you were doing some commentating while you were still
Yeah.
in the league, and then how did that set up?
I was doing an interview the year after I got sick. I had an opportunity to start my own foundation, Ryan Clark's Cure League in Pittsburgh, and we were searching for a cure for sickle cell and trying to spread awareness. So they booked like all these media things, and one of them was First Take. And just at the end of First Take, I was like, hey, you guys should let me come debate Skip. And I was like, I'm not no superstar. Nobody cares about me. But they did. They called me in. And I remember that Sunday, I got to watch the game with all the guys on Countdown. And I just had my notebook, right? Writing all the notes, getting ready, getting prepared. And when I went to the First Take meeting, when we were walking out, Skip stops everybody and he goes, I just want to let you know in front of all of these people, of any entertainer, current athlete we've ever had, you were the most prepared, you were the most engaged, that shows, man, because I really respect the way you approached it. And then I did pretty well. I would bounce around from NFL Network to ESPN, and we were in New Orleans for the Super Bowl, Baltimore versus San Francisco. I was down there, I was working on set, and I went up to Seth Markman, who's my boss now. I went up to Seth Markman, who runs ESPN NFL, and I said, hey, man, is it possible to intern? And he was like, well, we don't really have like current players intern. I said, well, every time you guys bring me up, you kind of handle me with kid gloves. Like there's this dude that walks me around the building and he's telling me where to go. And, he's kind of going through the questions. I said, I want to get my stuff like the normal analysts do. I want you to send me a schedule. I want the producers to reach out to me. I want to go through an extended period of time to learn, one, if I can do the job. 2, if I want to do the job. And so I did that, man. And after a little bit, like one weekend, an agent called me and they were like, man, I think we could get you paid to do TV while you play. And I was like, well, is that normal? And it was like, no, nobody's ever done it, but we believe we can help you. And so like that was kind of how it started. And I had my contract for my last 2 years. And then as soon as I retired on TV, you know what I mean? And went into my second career. A lot of times you're the last one to know that it's time to pivot. Because if you truly believe in something, how do you know that pivoting isn't necessarily quitting? It's hard to pivot from something you've been locked into for a very long time. If you haven't sewn into it or you haven't given a lot to it, then it's a little easier to move on to something else or to adjust. And so I can't say that I've truly learned when it's time to pivot as much as so it's like the world will tell you and, it'll give you something else.
Obviously, prepping for playing involves a certain amount of drills and practice. What are the things that you do to prepare yourself for being on camera?
I watch every snap.
So you're watching game tape?
I watch every single snap. I don't, and I'm very honest if I haven't gotten to it yet. So I'm on NFL Live and Monday Night Countdown. The call for NFL Live, if the show's at 4, is normally at 11 o'clock, right? My first production call. I try to stay up as late as I possibly can so I can rewatch the games, but sometimes you don't get to a game they want to talk about. And if they ask me, I'll tell them I haven't gotten there yet. The big thing now, though, is I can have that knowledge, but how much fun can I be, right? How entertaining can you be? What's the tone of this conversation? Because there are the conversations about football where Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen might do these crazy things. So I know how excited Bills Mafia is. I got to be that excited. I know how excited Chiefs Kingdom is. I got to be that excited, right? They want me to match their excitement for what their guy did because that's how special they think it is. Now, how special do I think it is? And then there's some times where I'm on set and you may think something's amazing. And I'm like, it's not that cool, right? I got to be able to show that as well.
You mentioned earlier watching your LSU game tape and not thinking you were that incredible in hindsight.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Looking at your early days in media,
I sucked.
how have you gotten better?
More confident, obviously. I think I'm more confident. I'm more myself. I remember a friend of mine was working at ESPN when I first got there, and they covered me in Washington, and I would help them do some things locally, And she says to me, "I wish everybody knew how funny you were." And I was like, "I'm freaking funny on TV." Because I thought I was being myself, but initially, because I wasn't a Hall of Famer, because I wasn't a quarterback, I felt that every time I talked, I had to show people how much football I knew, right? And when you're trying to show people how much football you know, you can't actually show them who you are, right? Because I'm not all football.
It's funny you say that. Being on ESPN demands a certain sort of snappiness and a punchiness in the way you deliver information and ideas. What you do on the pivot, though, is a much more subtle and thoughtful approach to sort of discourse. How did you tune yourself and sort of the conversations that you were having to be so pointedly different in that environment?
Because when I'm on ESPN, I'm talking about an object. When I'm on the pivot, I'm talking about humans. And I'm not one of those people that doesn't believe that players are human too. I'm just not talking about the human. The night that gave me the Emmy or that awarded me the Emmy was the night Damar Hamlin went to cardiac arrest on Monday Night Football in Cincinnati. Right, I was on TV for 2 hours, just me and Scott Van Pelt. This is about Damar Hamlin. And it's about a young man at 24 years old that was living his dream, that a few hours ago was getting ready to play the biggest game of his NFL career, and there's probably nowhere else in the world he wanted to be. And now he fights for his life. This is about a human. This is about a brother. This is about a son. This is about a friend. This is about someone who is loved by so many that you have to watch go through this. I wasn't talking about football. I wasn't talking about the player. I was talking about the person. I was talking about the people that would be affected by what he was going through. And so I understood that now I'm not entertaining, right? Now I'm having a conversation with family. The pivot, it's always that for me. One, whoever decides to sit with us has given us their time. I owe it to them to be prepared. I owe it to them to know as much as I can possibly know to keep a conversation going about their life, about their journey, about their passions, no matter how quickly or how long it takes them to answer my question. I also owe it to them to be able to get them comfortable enough that people see them beyond what they're able to do. And so I think that's a huge part of it for me. And it also evolved, right? When Michael Beasley breaks down on our show early on, in our tenure of doing the pivot, I was like, wait, that's who we are, right? We are a safe space for people to share things they might not share with other people. And I think being able to do that and have that experience has kind of helped us evolve into what we are. And it's like I told you too, though, that's just another piece of me. I am the dude that does ESPN. And I'm also the guy that does the pivot. None of us are this one thing all the time.
What is the key to creating that safe setting?
Yeah, I think the first thing is a lot of these people I know, right? And so that helps. I think much like sitting with you, when you ask me a question, I only see you. I do know he's there, and I know he's there, and I know there are people standing over there, but I'm having a conversation with you. I'm talking to you right now. And what I do, much like what you've done, It's like, you haven't looked at a piece of paper to have a conversation with me. You looked at me, right? You haven't looked down at your phone. You're not playing on your phone. You're not searching for anything. You're talking to me. And that makes me have a conversation with you. When our guests are talking, I'm fully engaged in what they're saying because I don't have a plan, right? I've read things about them. I've studied articles. I've studied what they've accomplished. I've learned about their families, their upbringings. I've learned about the things they say they still desire, but that doesn't mean I know everything. So in order to learn, I got to look in your eyes, right? I got to be attentive. And I think that helps because now people are like, damn, this dude really cares because I do. And so I think that's allowed us to be in that space. But the other piece of it is too, because we have done well and because of social media, people have seen what our show is like. So when Shaq sits down with us, and that was the first time he admitted publicly that he cheated on his wife and that was the reason he lost his family. The first thing he says when he sits down, because it was shortly after Michael Beasley, was, y'all ain't gonna make me cry, right? And so now there's an understanding of the depth of conversation that we have. When we sat with The Rock, part of it was, man, I dealt with some things in life that I believe could really help some people, and I wanna share them with you. Because he's seen us take care of other people who have opened up on our show, and he's seen us be vulnerable as well. The same as like other people have cried on our show, so have all three of us. You know, like all three of us in different moments have either cried with our guest or cried sharing something that we have gone through. And I think like, like this isn't a place that will judge you for being human.
How do you manage the business with the three of you? You know, you've had partnerships, I believe, Happy Dad and obviously with Fanatics for the last year, up until recently. How does the decision-making process work, and who's running the point on that?
So the first thing was we did the business first.
Okay.
Right? All the contracts and the percentages, the shares, all that was done at the beginning of the business.
And the guys are coming out of
Because they're coming out of a bad deal.
Yes.
Right? So they were like, hey, bro, we're doing the business side of this first, which was important, right? Because now those aren't things that you have to worry about or navigate while also trying to create great content and build a brand. Decision-making wise, I make the yeoman's amount of the decisions as far as what content is, if I'm being honest. Alicia and I, who's the producer, we make a ton of the decisions about what the business of being in front of the camera looks like. Behind the scenes, we all weigh in the same. When we're talking about what we're going to do that's going to continue to allow the podcast to make money. Any deal we're going to get into that deals with those things. But when it comes to like making the show, it's my producer and I. And I think part of it is like we care about that part more, And I know for me, I remember when the show started, I told him, I say, look, bro, understand what your priorities are, right? If your priority is money, you will make every decision based on money, and the fruit that it bears will bear that fruit. If your priority is fame or whatever it is, like that's the way you're going to make decisions. I said, my priority is making the best show and the best content possible, and I feel like the rest of the things will come. I think because of that, I'm not asked to do more than everybody else. I just want to. It's important to me that what we deliver is always as high quality of work as we possibly can. I process criticism, first of all, based on who the hell is criticizing. Because in a lot of cases, who are you to criticize me, right? Like, you didn't make me. So because you haven't done anything to get me to where I am, why am I supposed to value your criticism? The negative tone of criticism is normally because the people who are criticizing ain't your people. But if it's your people, if somebody telling me something from a place of love, I process it from a place of love. If you're telling me something from a place of hate, from a place of evil, from a place of disconnect, that's the way I process it. But I never allow that negativity or the criticism to define me. I move forward and allow myself to be the only definer of my fate.
You have one of the largest footprints in the podcast space for sports. Where does the Pivot brand go from here?
I think the first thing we need to do, honestly, is start to create other, whether it's podcasts or platforms with other talent. You know, I do believe we have the knowledge to do so. I believe we have a footprint that's already built that gives us a little bit of the cachet to do so. And as things continue to expand as far as content creation, we need to start doing more, right? We need to develop different branches off of this tree that we've grown, right? So you can also sow the seeds of that. And you know how it is, like you've been in this business for an extremely long time.
It's true.
Right? When you start at 17, like you did, and continue to grow and continue to be in these different places and write for these different magazines or take advantage of somebody getting a call in front of your desk and you like, hold on, let me try to write that or let me try to do that. You start to understand, okay, you have to be ready to react. You have to be ready to adjust, but you have to be in a place where you can take care or take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you. I don't feel like we've done a great job of that. You know, we've been so focused on building like this show, which is important because you got to keep the main thing. But I do believe we have to start attacking this space from different angles so you're not so dependent on the one thing.
Do you watch your own game tape and like critique?
No.
You
I
don't,
hate to hear myself talk.
really?
Kind of like we talked about earlier, I don't allow views to dictate that to me. You know, and I'm sure you felt
Yeah, I was
it.
gonna say, how do you define success for an episode?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I know you felt it. Like you're like, hey man, like this episode, fire. And then you like, womp, 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 nobody watched it. Right? And then you do one that you don't think you were your best, and maybe the guest was great, but it's one of those things that catches fire and it's viral and you get all these views. And so in our space, I truly only gauge success by how I feel. There, you know, in some of our largely viewed shows, I was like, I wasn't great. But, you know, you get a lot of views on it, maybe because the dude's famous, or maybe because the famous lady, the famous actress, or the famous entertainer, or the famous athlete you had on your show shared a story about somebody else that's super famous. And because that's the business, you had a very successful or popular episode. The stories that I care about aren't always the most famous people, right? But I do realize for the platform we have, it's important to get very important people to sit down with you because that's who people want to hear. I recently did something with Greg Brooks Jr., who was an LSU athlete, had a brain tumor.
Yes.
He had the brain tumor removed, and you know he's been experiencing just a very tough road back, a ton of adversity. And I grew up with his father. I coached GB Jr. in high school, along with my son. They're really good friends. And he had the surgery. He went to hospital on a Thursday, had the surgery on a Friday. I went to the hospital that next Tuesday, and I couldn't believe the young man I knew on Thursday was the same person I met Tuesday. You know, and his grandmother, who was a large part of my upbringing, she actually went to college with my parents, and they were very close. Just seeing her walking down the hall and seeing her cry and listening to his father talk about what they had been going through. And I always wanted to sit down with him, but he just wasn't in a place to where he could hold the conversation. And you know, and then as soon as he could do it, like I sat down with him, and that was a success for me because I had a passion. The success is having a want to and a will to do something and putting your all into it and knowing that in some sort of way you made a difference, you made an impact. And that's kind of how I see them all.
There was a clip you put on social media, this is probably in 2023, that detailed your 20-hour workday.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, at this point, you've been a professional for over 20 years. You've made quite a bit of money.
Mm-hmm.
You're quite comfortable. Where does the drive to work that kind of schedule and to work yourself that hard come from?
It's a good question. I don't really know. It doesn't seem odd to me, or it doesn't seem special, right? Sacrifice isn't some badge we get on the way to making our dreams a reality. It's a requirement. It's like I sort of relish in doing the things like other people find uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't a big player, but like I found enjoyment in looking at larger men who are supposed to be the baddest men in the world and saying to myself, I am going to try to split your face mask. Like, are you willing to go to that dark place every time you see me today? Right? And unfortunately, some of them are, and they're bigger and they're stronger. But I had an opportunity to see that every single Sunday or every time I stepped on the field. And so it was like, all right, you wake up at 5 o'clock in New York because you got a 6 o'clock meeting on Get Up. You do those shows, you get driven to the airport, you fly to Washington, D.C., you study the Monday Night Football game. Now you work with SVP until 2 o'clock, and then you get up at 6 to go to the airport, to fly to Connecticut so you could be in studio to do NFL Live. Did he do that? Did he do that? Did he do that? Nah, none of y'all did that. And not only did I do it, but on the night that I did it, someone died on the football field. And even though I was up at 5 o'clock, at midnight, the entire country was depending on me to make them feel okay about what happened to him. And on top of that, of everybody who's ever done TV, only one other person has had something that happened on the field almost take his life, and that's here to tell it. It's supposed to be there, bro. I was supposed to be where I was that morning. I was supposed to be where I was that night, but I'm only there because I was willing to do stuff other people wouldn't want to do. And I think that's when you're not the most talented human, or you're not like the smartest human, or you're not the most attractive human, it's like, yeah, I'm not the most of any of those things, but I'm the most of this one thing. And so like for me, being undrafted, being cut, being sick, all those things, if I lose the thing that I can control being the most of, then where's my edge? Where's my angle? Where's my adjustment, right? Where's my ability to circumvent what I don't have and what you have? And so I think that's probably where it comes from, which is a very, very natural thing for me that's not forced.
I think that is a great place for us to wrap this conversation up.
My man, thank you so much.
Thank you for the time.
Appreciate you, brother.